Okay, so we were talking about perfect matchings for planar graphs, and we are going towards proving Castellan's theorem, which says so towards proving towards finding a formula for the partition function of the Daima model, we showed that the Pfaffian is the right thing to do in some sense if you can find an orientation for which each of these signs is the same, because every term in the Pfaffian expansion of uh, the oriented adjacency matrix KO, it corresponds exactly to a perfect matching. And if you can find signs such that epsilon O of m, such that epsilon O is independent of m, then you're done. And Castellan's theorem says that if G is a planar graph, then you can find such an orientation. So our first step was to find a Castellan orientation, which is for a planar graph, which is an orientation in which each face has this clockwise odd property, which is that as you traverse an edge, as you traverse the edges of a face, you find an odd number of edges which are in the opposite direction as you traverse clockwise. Okay, so what we proved is that where is the statement? Yeah, so we proved that there is a Castellan orientation for any planar graph. That was towards the end of the last class. So are there any questions so far? Okay, so let me so this was a question I think Sutanai asked, so let me give this to you as an exercise. So he asked that when will the outer face satisfy the clockwise odd property? And so this is, I mentioned the answer, but I'll leave this as an exercise for you. For the outer face, the clockwise odd property or condition will be satisfied if and only if G has an even number of vertices. Okay, so what we've shown is that you can find a Castellan orientation, but which is just sort of a local property. But remember, we want a Pfaffian orientation, so an orientation in which the number of clockwise odd edges, what is NO, remember? So NO is the number of edges which are in the opposite orientation as you traverse clockwise. We want this to be odd for every even cycle whose complement has a perfect match. So that's so a Castellan orientation is a local property, but this is a global. A Pfaffian orientation is a global property. So that's the next lemma. So let O be a Castellan orientation for a planar graph G. Then, given a clockwise oriented simple closed curve C, on G, in G, and O of C and the number of vertices enclosed by C have opposite parity. Okay, so this is going from local to global. So if you have some G, like in the previous example, over here, and I take closed curve, like maybe I'll take the outer face, that's a closed curve, then it's saying that the number of clockwise odd edges on that curve C is odd if and only if the number of vertices internal to that is even. Okay, so that's what we're going to try to prove. So we will perform induction on K, which is the number of faces enclosed by C. Okay, so you have some graph. Okay, so let's take care of the base case first. So when K equals 1, this is exactly the clockwise odd condition. Because then there are no internal vertices, and the number of which is, and 0 is an even number, so, and the number of clockwise number of edges going the wrong oppositely oriented is an odd number, so they clearly have different property. Okay, so now let's consider the general case. So suppose C, which is the boundary of some region S, is a closed curve. Enclosing K plus 1 faces. K is greater than or equal to 1, and M vertices, and internal vertices. Okay, so maybe I'll draw some figures. So here is your graph. So this is G, and there's some curve C, and let me mark some. I mean, this is a discrete object. Okay? So all these are edges, and there are some internal. Okay, and so let me just draw some. Let me triangulate it. Okay, something. So this is C, this is S, S is inside. Okay. Right. So now Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll pick a face F. In S such that the boundary of F intersects intersects C in an interval, i.e. having consecutive edges. Okay, so just to complicate things a little bit, so let me add another. So this is the interval. Okay. Okay. So is that clear? So this is the face, and so you want to choose something that a face that touches C. That's it. So this is the face. Okay. Okay. Then okay. So now I will give some. So now consider C prime, which is everything except the face F. Okay, so that is then S prime, which is S minus F, contains K faces. And C prime, which is boundary of S prime, is still simple and closed. Okay. Now suppose F meets S prime, maybe I should say, okay, S prime is fine, in L edges. So here these are, so there are 3, so L, so L equals 3 in this example. So there's this, this, and this. Maybe I should use yet another color. L equals 3 because of this, this, and that. Okay. Okay, so is that clear? Okay. So now by the induction hypothesis, NO of C prime, which is that, and wait. So I finished, I forgot myself. So this implies, so how many internal edges does S prime have? So S prime contains how many internal edges? Okay, so let's look at that. So S contains M internal vertices. So and we are saying that there are L edges over here on F intersection S prime. So so how many internal vertices does S prime contain? Anybody?
L minus 1?
Sort of. So that is what F contains, right? But I'm asking for S prime.
M minus L plus 1.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
sorry.
Yeah. So originally there were M. Now there are L edges over here internally. So that means there are L minus 1 vertices. So it's M minus L minus 1 internal vertices. Is that clear? Yeah. Okay. So now I can use the induction hypothesis. So C prime, which contains k faces. I mean, S prime contains k faces, so I can apply the induction hypothesis. So NO of C prime and M minus L plus 1 have opposite parity. Okay, so now let's see what we can conclude. Now we have to relate NO of C with NO of C. So now let us compute NO of C from NO of C. So now I am looking at the number of oppositely oriented edges in C and comparing it with oppositely oriented edges in C prime. Well, everything is the same as that for C prime. So I have my first contribution is that. Plus I have some edges here. So I need to take care of the opposite oriented edges over here. I mean, yeah. So that will come from F. So that is NO of F. But now I'm faced with a problem because I have all these extra edges to worry about, both in C prime and in F. So can you see how to get rid of that?
So maybe we count L because so the paths, if you take both the paths, one of them should be in the direction of the orientation we have fixed.
Right.
So for each of those L edges, we just take one, we count one, and we take L as separately.
That's right. So does everybody understand Mohit's argument? So pick an edge here, let's say this one. It will either contribute oppositely to C prime, or it will contribute oppositely to F, because both are clockwise. So maybe I'll use another color. So this is clockwise. Oh, counterclockwise. This is clockwise and this is also clockwise. So you see they disagree on these L edges. So each of those L edges is either is in the right orientation either for C prime or for F. It cannot be for both. And so we have this extra contribution when we add NO of C prime and NO of F for every single edge in F intersection S prime. Okay. So we have to subtract it off and then we are done. Okay, is that argument clear? Okay. So the point is that if you have adjacent faces, the clockwise orientation of one will oppose the, how should I say? So the direction of traversal of edges on the boundary of two faces are going to be always opposite. So if I draw some figure like that, okay, let me draw some benzene-like thing. So if I have clockwise here and clockwise here, the direction of traversal of this edge is downwards here, but is upwards here. This will always happen. Okay, so that's the key idea. Okay, so now let's put everything together. So now let's look modulo 2. So from by considering the above equation modulo 2, the parity of NO of C is congruent to, well, we said that the induction hypothesis tells us that the parity of NO of C prime is the opposite of m minus L plus 1. So it's the same as m minus L. So I replace this by m minus L. What is the parity of NO of F? Well, F is a singleton phase. I mean, it doesn't enclose any internal vertices. And by construction, this is a Castelline orientation. So the number of clockwise oriented edges is odd. So its parity is 1. And I have a minus L. Okay. So of course these two cancel. So this is again congruent to m plus 1 mod 2. Okay. So remember, m was the number of internal vertices of C. So what we have shown is that the NO of C and M have the opposite orientation, have the opposite parity, sorry. So proving this. Okay. So this is the sort of transition from local to global. And to summarize or to combine these results, we have the final lemma, which says that any Castelline orientation O of a planar graph is a Pfaffian orientation. And what's the point? So planar graph, let's say G. So let C be an even cycle in G. Remember, we have to say something about even cycles whose complements contain a perfect matching. So let C be such an even cycle. It's an even cycle in G such that G minus C admits a perfect matching. So what does that mean? So it has to be an even cycle, otherwise you don't get a perfect matching, because G is itself even by definition, and you have to remove C, so C has to be removed. So here is G and here is some C. Then by the Jordan curve theorem, whatever, blah blah, there are an even number of so then the number of internal vertices here, this has to be even if this has to admit a perfect matching, because this is now disjoint from this part. So these two have to have both have to have even cardinality. Okay. So C encloses an even number of vertices. And so by lemma 2, NO of C is odd. And this says that O is right. So remember that we had argued by this calculating the sign that we want to find an O such that NO of C is odd for every even cycle C whose complement admits a perfect match. So then we are done. Okay. So these three. So what's the upshot of all that? So if we have a planar graph G, we have found a Pfaffian orientation. So an orientation O, which is a Castelline orientation, and that is which is also a Pfaffian. So the plural of lemma is, people often use lemmas, but the original, by the rules of Latin, the plural of lemma will be lemmata. So these three lemmata together. Okay. Any questions about this? I'm going to do some examples, but before that, any questions? Okay, so let's do some examples. So let's say let Cn be the cycle graph. On n vertices, on two nodes. So what is a cycle graph? It's just you take n points and connect. So it's like the graph of a polygon. It's a simple polygon. Okay. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So here is for n equals 4. So can you find a Castelline orientation? This is a single cycle. This is clearly planar, by the way, and this is a single cycle. There is a single internal phase, no internal vertices. So you have to find an orientation for which, as you traverse clockwise, you find an odd number oppositely oriented. So what is an example? Anybody? Maybe it's
all edges and the clockwise direction and one edge in the opposite, like.
Exactly. So actually, in this, that's right, Karthik is right. So actually, the labeling itself tells you the hint. So if you take the orientation induced by the labeling, in which smaller elements, where you go from smaller to larger, so like so. Maybe I'll use another color here. So this is the singleton. This is the only edge that's in the wrong direction when you go clockwise. Right? So it's automatically satisfies the clockwise odd property, and one can check. So how many perfect matchings do you think this has? So let's assume all weights are 1. Yes? So we want to take the Pfaffian of this matrix. You of course have zeros along the diagonal. So we are just counting number of perfect matchings. So that was Z, C to N. There's an edge from 1 to 2, and that is counted with +1. There's an
There are only 2 perfect matchings, right?
Yes, that's it. Yeah. There are only 2 perfect matchings, but let's see. I mean, if one, I mean, you pick an edge for 1. It's perfect matching, so 1 has to be matched. So let's say it's matched to 2. Then that forces 3 to 4, 5 to 6, etc. And otherwise you map which 1 to 8, and then that forces all the others. So they are exactly 2. So, but let's see if we can see this. So I'll have. So this idea of the orientation extends to any 2n gone for C2n. I mean. So then if you think about how the, I mean, we are going to label the edges, label the rows and columns of this matrix in the obvious way, using natural order on the integers. So we'll get +1, +1, +1 like that, and because it's Q symmetric, -1, -1, -1. Oops. And 0 here. And in addition, we have, this is the 1, 8 edge is opposite related. So we have a 1, -1 here and +1 here. Okay, and zeros everywhere else. Okay, so this is a special kind of matrix called a circulant matrix. So if you follow every diagonal cyclically, so then you get, it's constant along those diagonals. So this is of course constant 0 on the main diagonal, and then above diagonal you go like that and you go here, that's also 1. So this is 1's here, similarly -1's here, and every other diagonal is here. So it's a circulant matrix, and for circulant matrices nice things happen, and so maybe I'll leave it as an exercise for you to show that this is true. Actually, it's not so hard because you know the formula for a Pfaffian from the matchings. So you can check that there are only 2 matchings that can contribute. Okay. So let's do one more example. Let's do the ladder graph. Ln. This is the graph that looks like a ladder. So what is it? So you have a path on n vertices, and you have another path on n vertices, and you connect them like this. Okay. So this is length n. Or rather length n minus n vertices. Okay, so now things are tricky because you want them many faces. So this is clearly planar as well. Slightly more tricky. So how do you find? You want to find an orientation such that each face is clockwise out. Can you see how to do this? So I'll give a hint. Again, you can find an orientation which is naturally induced from the labeling and which is clockwise up. So if you sort of label things the right way, it automatically falls out. Can you think of an orientation? Or just a labeling? Tell me a labeling which will do the job.
The vertical edges have to be in one direction, and the horizontal edges all have to be in one direction.
But which direction?
And
Okay,
like
so
either works.
no, that's not right.
So like both the horizontal edges can have to like all the horizontal edges have to go in the right, and like vertical one can go in top. Like all the vertical edges move towards top.
Okay, but you're saying this and this, right?
Yeah.
But that's false. Because these two are clockwise and these two are counterclockwise. So it's clockwise even actually. So that doesn't work.
Oh, so okay, sorry. Your horizontal will have to go in the opposite. Like the lower horizontal has to go in the left direction.
That's right. So you can choose a labeling like so. All the vertical edges pointing upward and all the horizontal pointing downward. So, okay, because of the way I did it and sticking to my convention. Okay, let me go and do it my way. So I will label them like so. This is the same thing as Karthik said. It's exactly right. So n plus 1 to n minus 1 to n minus 2. So here you will go to the right. Here on this level you will go to the left, and vertically you will go downwards. Okay. But what Karthik said is also right. Yeah. Okay. So let us say give horizontal edges weight alpha and vertical edges weight beta. So these are all alphas, including these. So maybe I should use another color. Alpha, 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 alpha. And these are beta, beta. Okay. Okay. Now, how do you calculate? So, right. So let's try and calculate the partition function. So, how do we do it? So one can construct the matrix and all that, but this is simple enough that one can do it by brute force. So how? I mean, if you didn't know anything about Castellan, Pfaffy, and blah blah blah, how would you? And I just gave you this problem. How would you do it? Yes, Aradhya?
Recursion, right?
Recursion, that's right. So what's the recursion? Can you explain? So let's say ZLN. Okay, I want to calculate ZLN. How will you do it recursively?
Something like alpha square times n minus 2 and beta times. But oh, sorry, there would be some change.
No, you're right. Go ahead. So explain why alpha squared and why beta.
I mean 1 and 2, then 2n and 2n minus has to be connected, and then it's n minus 2 block is left.
That's it. And otherwise?
So and the other option is 1 is connected to 2n, and then 2 is connected to 2n minus 2. Then again it's an n minus 1 problem, but
yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's it. So what Aradhya is saying is, you look at 1. Look at how 1 is connected. It can either be connected to 2. It has to be matched either to 2 or to 2n. So suppose it's matched to 2. Then 2n is forced to be matched to 2n minus 1. So then what you are left with is a ladder graph of size. Oh, this should be L sub n. Is a ladder graph of size n minus 2. So this will be alpha squared ZL n minus 2. Or 1 is connected to 2n. with weight beta, and what you are left with is then a ladder graph of size 1 less. So this is a recursion with, we need the initial condition. So what is ZL1? L1 means there's just 2 vertices like so, and that will have weight beta, and L2 will have will be a squared. So you will have, as we discussed in the last class, you will have 2 perfect matchings, both horizontal with weight alpha squared, or both vertical with weight beta squared. Okay. So for example, ZL3 is alpha squared beta plus beta alpha squared plus beta squared, which is beta cubed plus 2 alpha squared beta. Okay, and for 3 you can see that there's beta cube you get by matching 3 vertically, and there are 2 that you get with 2 horizontal edges. The 1, 2, so these 2 and this vertical, or these 2 and this vertical. So if n is odd, there has to be a common factor of beta that you can easily see. So what's the general formula? So suppose alpha and beta were 1, then can you see what we have found? So,
Fibonacci series.
that's right. Yes, I don't know who said that, but yeah. So if alpha equals beta equals 1, then ZLN is Fn plus 1, where Fn is the nth Fibonacci number. So the usual convention is to take F0 is 0 and F1 is 1. Okay. So that's Fibonacci, but now we have these alpha betas. What the hell do we do? So it turns out that there is a well-known generalization of the Fibonacci numbers known as the Fibonacci polynomials. So definition, the Fibonacci polynomial Fn of x are defined by the recursion Fn of x is x Fn minus 1 of x plus Fn minus 2 of x. So with again, oh sorry, I should let me just correct it. With Fn of 0, sorry, F0 of x is 0 and F1 of x is 1. That's right. So F2 of x is going to be x times F1 of x plus 0, which is going to give you x. Okay, like that. So now if you see, so one can show if it is an exercise, maybe show that ZLN is alpha to the n F n plus 1. So here, for example, if you okay, I think I can actually do it on Sage. So
you mean beta, not x, right?
Sorry. I yeah, I don't know what I meant. Okay. So this should be beta by alpha. Thank you. Right. So let's see Fibonacci. Let's see what Fibonacci does. So this gives you the Fibonacci numbers, but I need the Fibonacci polynomials. So let's go quickly define them. So def all of n, if n equal to 0, return 0. If n equal to 1, return 1. Return x times n minus 1 plus. So let's just check equal to, yeah, okay, all of n, and this is not really a good strategy because I've taken x as a global variable, so, and you can see now it's very nasty, so I should simplify. Okay, that will work. Maybe I should factor. Okay, that's better. So now you can see, so I get my x cubed plus 2x at level 4 for n equals 4, and what I wanted is over here. So if I do so I would have done beta cube by alpha cube plus 2 x, which is 2 beta, and then I'll multiply by alpha cube. Okay. So that matches. Okay, so just like the Fibonacci numbers, the Fibonacci polynomials also satisfy some nice properties. So here's something that you can show. So fn of x is z plus to the n minus z minus to the n by z plus minus z minus, where z plus minus is x plus minus square root of x squared plus 4 by 2. So this generalizes Binet's formula. So I don't know if you know. So this for the Fibonacci numbers. So fn of 1 is the Fibonacci number, of course. Let me just say fn. This is 1 by square root 5, root 5 plus 1 by 2 to the n minus, I think, root 5 minus 1, or maybe it's the other way around. This minus this should be root 5, yeah, so this is wrong. This is 1 minus 6. Okay, so this, and you know this is the golden ratio, so that's why there's an intimate connection between the Fibonacci numbers and golden ratio. Another thing one can show is that fn of x can be written as a sum k equals 0 to n. So the coefficients, so when you look at an expansion like this, you can see that if the top coefficient is 1, the second coefficient is just the natural numbers, the third, go ahead, the third is the triangular numbers, the fourth is then you see the fourth column is going to be n choose 3 and so on. Okay, so the general formula is this, get n plus k minus 1 by 2, choose k, x to the k, whenever where n and k have the same parity. You don't sum over all k. I mean, it doesn't make sense to sum over things where they don't have the same parity, because you'll get an odd, you'll get a half integer upstairs. Anyway, there are other ways of writing. Okay, so to end, let me just to end this part of the discussion. I'll just state a beautiful theorem of Castellani and Temperley-Fisher. So, which generalizes the ladder graph. Okay, so let QMN be the.
You mean n and k have different parity in the last one? N plus k minus 1?
Sorry, different parity. Thank you. Yes, n plus k minus 1 should be an even number. Thank you. Yes, so let QMN be the MIN grid graph. So let me change the background to graph. I'm able to draw something. So example Q46 equals this. Okay, so this is an example of a grid graph. So all of these are vertices like that, and you have horizontal and vertical edges, and with again horizontal edge weights alpha and vertical edge weights beta. Okay. So you want to find the partition function of this. So of course, one of m and n have to be even. Okay. So first, one has to generalize the orientation over here, and actually it works in a natural way. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry, this is 7. Anyway, this is 4. So then you go backwards, so 8, 9, 10, etc. up to 14. Then you go 15 up to 21, and then you go. Okay, sorry. Now I've done 5, 7 actually. Okay, but 22 to 29. 28. 29. Okay, so this is not really what I wanted. I wanted 4, 6, and okay, never mind. So you get the picture. So if you do this kind of labeling and you do the induced orientation, you will get all vertical edges pointing downwards, horizontal edges alternately pointing left and right. Like so. Okay, I'm not going to. Okay. So here is the theorem. I'll just write the theorem for m and n odd, even, sorry, so that there is a perfect matching. I mean, it's enough for, of course, for one of them to be even, but then the formula is a little more complicated, but not by much. So this is Castelline in 1961. This is part of the same paper where he understood how to do this for general graphs, general planar graphs. And he also generalized it to graphs embedded on the torus, for example. So what you could do is you could take the grid graph and wrap it around in both directions or one direction. So if you do it in one direction, let's say you connect 14 to 8 and 15 to 21 and so on, then you get a graph embedded on a cylinder. And even in that case he understood it. And also if you in addition also connect 1 and 29, 2 and 30 and like that. So then it's a graph embedded on a torus, and he understood it fully. It's a, yeah, so. And coincidentally, in the same exact year, Temperley and Fisher, also 1961. So it's one of those coincidences that happen in science. So Castelline was independently thinking about the same thing. Also, there is no secret. And Michael Fisher and Temperley were also thinking about this same problem. So they're both physicists essentially. Castelline's results are more general. He was thinking more like a mathematician though. But if you read the paper, it's written in a physics style. So there are no lemmas and theorems and proofs, but everybody understood that everybody knows that he understood what he was talking about. So you could see that he thought about this in much more generality. Whereas Temperley and Fisher were specifically thinking about the grid graph. So here's the theorem. So Z of Q2M to N is given by 4 to the M times N. And this is the most amazing formula. If you have not seen this before, I hope you will be sufficiently impressed. So this is product J goes from 1 to M, product K goes from 1 to N, alpha squared cosine squared pi K by N plus 1 plus beta squared cosine squared pi J by N plus 1. Okay. So it's an absolutely amazing formula because remember M and N are arbitrary integers. So these cosine squareds are irrational numbers in general. And so are these guys. I mean, there are, for some values of N and M, there are closed form expressions, but they usually involve square roots of square roots, things like that. So when you look at, and alpha and beta, remember, are variables, they're arbitrary. So this is going to be a polynomial in alpha and beta with a priori irrational coefficients. But when you multiply them out magically, you get a polynomial not only with rational coefficients but with integer coefficients in alpha and beta. And you can see this already in the case when n equals 1. So when n equals 1, we get the ladder graph, or m equals 1, whatever you prefer. You get the ladder graph and you see you are getting nice polynomials, this Fibonacci. Okay, so it's really amazing formula. Yeah, so I won't prove this. It's not terribly hard to prove once you have all this machinery. The key idea is to write the oriented adjacency matrix in a nice block diagonal way, and then use some and diagonalize it basically. So, but you know, nobody could have guessed that you would get such a formula. Right? So it's really remarkable. Right. Any questions about this? So maybe I can show you how this works. So let's define I don't know, ZQ and M. So I'll take inputs M, N, A, B. Actually, I'll not do it for AB. Let me assume A and B are 1. Okay. So I will return product of, let's assume AB, I meant alpha beta. So let's assume alpha and beta are 1. So I get cosine of pi times k by n plus 1. So here I am implicitly assuming that squared. I am assuming that m and n are, this is 2m and 2a, plus cos pi times j by m plus 1. Oops. Squared for j in range 1 m plus 1, for k in range m plus 1. Okay, this is m and I don't know, 2. I forgot to multiply by power of 4. So 4 to the n times n times this 16. So I mean, so I can enter m and n as arbitrary integers, and I'll get the number on the m by 2m by 2n grid. So let's say 3. Okay, something went wrong. Yes, I'm getting a 0. Okay, so maybe we should just check this one. Okay, so let me take n equals 1.
You need one of the indices to be odd, right? Also to be even.
No, but I am taking this for 2m, 2n.
Okay, my bad.
That's my sudden worry. And I think I know what I made a mistake with. But let's just do this. So let me do m1 for n in range. So we should get Fibonacci numbers here. Okay, so we will get funny things, but what I can do is I can just numerically evaluate this. So I'm getting 0, so I think I know what's wrong. So what I should do is actually 2n plus 1. Yeah, so now you see I want to, so I'm going to get the, I'm getting alternate Fibonacci numbers. Because I would have got 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34 like that. So, which I should, right? Because I'm taking 2m. Yeah, so it's okay. Yeah, so this was a mistake. So this should be 2n plus 1. So what was happening is that if m is odd, earlier if one of these was odd, I was getting cos of pi by 2 somewhere in the middle. And that was messing it up. If both were odd, that was the problem. Okay, yeah, now it's correct. Yeah, so this is this amazing formula. Okay, so okay, so now, so let me say a quick word about domino tilings before. Okay, so yeah, so equivalent picture. As tilings. So I'm specifically talking about this. So the Dyma model on QMN can be viewed as what's called a domino tiling of the m+1 by n+1. Let me say chessboard. Okay, so let me illustrate this with a so let me take just do 4 by 4. So this is what I was going for. So here you have an m by n chessboard, and where dominoes are what you sort of think they are. We should have done that. Okay. And this. Okay, so what we want is to tile this region with blocks of 2 which are either horizontal or vertical. So these are called dominoes. And you can see that this 4 by 4 grid here corresponds. So you can place these. So let me draw the dual graph, the planar dual of these in the center. So remember, the vertices of the planar dual are the faces, and the edges are whenever they are adjacent. So every now if you ignore the outer face, which we are going to do, you get exactly a 4 by 4 grid graph. So the chessboard, which also has a grid shape, is the same. I mean, has planar dual with the grid graph. So each perfect matching over here, like for example this. This too symmetric. Okay. This is a perfect matching of the grid graph, but you can easily easily imagine that whenever you have a horizontal edge, I put a horizontal domino, and vertical domino whenever I have a vertical edge. Okay, so these two pictures are equivalent. Okay, any questions about this? Okay. Very good. So now I'm going to switch gears and I want to talk about Aztec diamonds. So if there are no questions, I'm going to start a new topic.
So the ones that you mentioned on the torus, they correspond to different boundary conditions.
Right. So when that's right. So when you do it on a torus, then there is no boundary. So yeah. So what? Okay. Since you asked, I can tell you. So what Castellan showed is that the partition function of this partition function of the dimer model of a graph that is embedded on a torus can be expressed as a sum of 4 Pfaffians, and for a cylinder as a sum of 2 Pfaffians. And he, although it's not written in too much detail, it's clear that he understood what to do if you have a graph embedded on a surface of genus G. He saw. So I can tell you what it is. So if a graph is embedded on a surface of genus G, then the partition function of the dimer model on that graph can be written as a sum of 4 to the G Pfaffians. So that's the result. So he understood it, but he didn't give a complete proof. The proof came much later in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. Anything else, Aradhya? You were asking something?
4 to the G terms come because of a product of G many things where each of them contains no, sorry, nothing.
Yeah, so the 4 to the G comes because essentially because there's a notion of a spin structure on a surface of genus G, and there are exactly 4 to the G of them, and each one of them corresponds to one of these Pfaffians. But okay, all that is not really relevant to our discussion. Any other questions? Okay, very good. So now I want to go to defining Aztec diamonds. Okay. So I think I already said what they are in the first week of the course, and I was doing the advertising pitch. But let me now define them formally. So let a lattice square. Oh, by the way, I should have said that if you want to know more about tilings, there's this very nice article by Federico Ardea and Richard Stanley, which is aimed at a very general audience. You don't need much background for it. And it has, it's just called tilings, and it really gives a lot of nice examples of theorems in this area. Okay. So lattice square is a subset of R2 given by A plus 1 cross B plus 1, where A and B are integers. So it's the, if you like, it's the fundamental domain of the square lattice. Okay, so let AN in R2 be the subset, be the union, of lattice squares that lie completely inside set x, y in R2 is that mod x plus mod y is then equal to plus 1. Okay, so let me show you some figures. So here is what they look like. So let me copy paste this. So even these figures are from I've shamelessly copied from Arthur Stanley's notes. So you should imagine that the center is the origin. So AZ1 means, so this is origin, all of these are origin. So I should mark it. Okay, so this is the point 1, 1, and so when you take n equals 1, you get, you have this square which is oriented at 45 degrees. So here it lies like that. So it's inside this. So these other things are not completely. These other lattice squares are only partially there. So that's why they're not included. Okay. So this is what is n, and we want to consider domino tilings of an. Equivalently, we are looking at perfect matchings of the dual graph A hat n. So I mean dual graph in quotes. I don't really want the outer face. I don't really care for it. So for example, A hat 1 is the graph which is the square, which we have already seen as the ladder graph of size 2, for example. But A hat 2 is new, so you have 2. I should use the line. Okay, no, you get the idea. Okay, so then we have perfect matches of those. These two are clearly the same, as I argued before. Okay. So first, if we are going to talk about domino tilings, all that, we need to convince ourselves that there exists a domino tiling. So note that there exists. So can you give me an example of a domino tiling? Anybody?
I mean all down.
All vertical, yes. Okay. So but you have to be a little careful. You cannot match these two, for example. So you match from the top and you scroll down. That's the one way. Okay. So okay, I'll be able to state the result. Oh. For example, the all horizontal or all vertical. Okay. So right. So let me just show you for A2. So again, I'm shamelessly copying from earlier instance. So these are all the 8 tilings. Okay, so we are so this is the all horizontal, this is the all vertical, and so on. Okay, so now here is a nice observation that's going to help us. So let T be a tiling of A. So we are going to define two statistics. Two statistics. T. So first observation is, so before we do that, one observation which will lead to, which will motivate the statistic. So for an integer k is equal to n, the line y equals k, so consider the line y equal to k. This is going to divide an into two regions with an even number of lattice squares, no matter what k you choose. Okay, so for example, and this has to do with the fact that every row has an even number of squares. So if I cut it off somewhere here, let me cut this off somewhere here, you will see each row has an even number of squares. So the region that is going to divide to is going to contain an even number. So what this implies is that an even number of vertical dominoes must cross every line y equal to k in T. So for any tiling, if I look at, I fix a k and I look at how many cross from one side to the other, there have to be an even number, because if it were odd, then you would have an odd number of lattice squares remaining to tile, which is untileable, of course. So what this further implies is that the number of vertical dominoes or dimers in T is even, because every domino crosses exactly one such K. Right? So I mean, you can check in this example. So this is 0, 2, 2, 2, 4, 4, 6, 8. Anyway, okay, so that's clear. So that motivates our first statistic. So let V of t be the number, be half times the number of vertical dominoes. Okay. So yeah. Okay. Now the second statistic is going to be even more non-trivial. Let the rank of t. So this, the fact that this makes sense, I'll prove in the next class. The rank of t, denoted R of t, be the okay. I should have. Okay. So I need to define something first. For any tiling, okay, just a second. So notice that a pair of consecutive horizontal dominoes can be switched as follows. So if I have two dominoes which are like so, which are consecutive like so, this can be switched to a pair of consecutive dominoes like so. So call this an elementary move. Either way, one to the other. Okay, so if you have two dominoes that are exactly parallel and adjacent, they can be sort of switched. I should have said adjacent. Exactly adjacent. Okay, so we'll call this an elementary move. It need not exist. I mean, you can't always do it. I mean, for example, these two you can't switch. Okay. So now here's the non-trivial definition. So I'll define the rank of t be the minimum number of elementary moves needed to obtain t from the all horizontal tiling. So this is not, well, number one, it's not even clear if one can get from any horizontal from the all horizontal tiling to any tiling T. But even if you, yeah, so if you can, then this minimum number makes sense, but otherwise it's not clear. So let's look at this figure. So this is the, so let me show you that you can get, in this case, from all horizontal. So I'll take a couple of minutes extra to state the theorem and we'll so here's the all horizontal tiling. If I do the elementary move on this, I get this tiling. If I do it on this, I get this tiling, so that finishes off the first row. Now if I do this elementary move over here, I get this tiling, so then I get these four. Now if I switch back these two verticals, central verticals to horizontal, I get this. Then if I switch the bottom two horizontals to vertical, I get this. Or if I switch the top two to, I get this. And then from here I switch these two and I get it. Okay, so it's not completely obvious that you can get. But if you can get, then assume that for the moment. So assume this for the moment. This makes sense. Then here's the beautiful theorem of Elki's. No, I have to state this. Let AD of n x q be the sum over all domino T domino tiling. Again, x to the v of t, q to the r of t. So x to the number of half the number of vertical dominoes, q to the rank. Then the theorem of Elki's, Kuperberg, Larson and Prop is from 1992. That AD of n x q is the product k equals 0 to n minus 1, 1 plus x q to the 2k plus 1, x times 2q to the 2k plus 1 raised to the n minus k. So, and this is a very nice readable article. I can post it in the files for the course. So it's there on the archive as a single paper, and they give 4 proofs of this result, actually 4 completely different proofs, and we will prove it one way. Actually, we will not even prove the general result, but we will prove one of the results that is going to be useful for us later on also, and which will relate to alternating sign matrices. Okay, so I'll move towards the proof of this thing in the next class. Any questions? Okay, let me stop recording in that case.